In the name of the one holy and living God. Amen. Not easy being merry this Christmas. The virus has thrown us a real curveball, so things that we thought were reliable turn out not to be. I'm used to some things not being reliable, but getting to St. Paul's to be together with you to worship is something that I've taken for granted. But so far I'm doing pretty well, but there are certainly a lot of people for whom this is a lot worse. People that live from paycheck to paycheck, or people that work in hospitals. Life has become fragile for many of us that never expected it. So in the middle of this, who's to blame? There's certainly a lot of finger pointing around, and I'm sure there are others, but I've only one person who's pointed a finger at God. That was Jimmy Kimmel. Now, if you point the finger at God, which is what I propose to do, you have to be careful about some things. From the gospel today, no one has ever seen God. And Gregory of Nazianzus in the 4th century took that to say, we can't really talk about God. What we can talk about, however, is our experience of God. So what has been our experience that points a little bit to what we can understand about what God is doing? Well, the first thing I think we can look at is the fact that for our bodies, the virus for many people, our immune system kicks in, and suddenly, the virus is defeated. Some people, it's happened so that they don't even notice it. But for others, it's a much more serious issue. They get very sick, and many people have died. And so trying to figure out where God is in this is not quite clear. Then we can turn our attention to science. Science has been, for the last 300 years, basically been based on mathematics. And mathematics was a reliable source. 2 plus 2 always equals 4, reliably. The trouble is, that's not the whole story. That 2 plus 2 equals 4 is the reason why you and I are being able to see each other. That's what makes this camera work. That's what makes your computer receive it. And so mathematics is a certainly good and reliable basis for all of many things. But 2 elephants plus 2 flowers doesn't add up to anything. And so about 100 years ago, Albert Einstein was his theory of relativity, and Werner Heisenberg and the quantum theory had to deal with the fact that science isn't totally reliable when it comes to mathematics, and so we have to deal with probabilities. And our experience of probabilities means it's not completely, absolutely reliable. So what's Jimmy Kimmel's solution? What should God do? According to Jimmy Kimmel, he should send a lightning bolt. He didn't say on who, but as we see in today's gospel, that's not how God works. Instead of sending a lightning bolt, what does God do? He's born as a tiny, helpless infant. He needs to be taken care of. He needs to be loved. It's very different from a lightning bolt. And there's a very important reason why. Because of human freedom. God comes to us out of love, which gives us freedom. Lightning bolts don't give anybody freedom. And it is that love that God comes to us with love and evokes within us a response of love. And it is that freedom that we celebrate in this Christmas festival. Now, there's something basic to that John identifies at the very beginning. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. And it is that Word that was made flesh. Now, I think it's the significance of that is that we need to understand that the Greek word for word is logos. And that's not just sort of an esoteric word. We get from it the word logic. We say something is logical. Or we talk about sociology or theology, which is talk about our social conditions or talk about God. And it is the Creator who is that Word made flesh. It is in part of the reason why you and I can talk, where we can make sense of something. Paul says that it's that God, same God whose Spirit is the one who is in our hearts. And it is because of God's Spirit that is in our hearts that we are transferred from being slaves to being children of God. And being children of God, Paul says, we are also heirs. We are heirs with Christ. Now, in the midst of this pandemic, we struggle. But the first reading this evening is the one that is from 3rd Isaiah to people who struggle. Isaiah is speaking to the people who have just come back from exile in Babylon. And they came back with high hopes. Everything was going to be great. We're home again. But everything was in ruins. And the hope for a life that they expected when they got back home just simply wasn't panning out. But Isaiah said, prepare, God is coming with victory. You will in fact see a restored new life. It would take time, but it will come. And it is the trust that in the middle of this pandemic that you and I believe that God's love is in fact at work in us, and we will in fact come through this, and that we will in fact thrive. Now, how do we experience that? We experience it, first of all, because we trust in God's love. God's love for us is something that we base our lives on. It's secure. It is something that inspires you and me to do what Mary and Joseph did to that infant 2,000 years ago, to love. So the question is, during this period, did we love? We sure did. By telephone, by letters and cards, by emails, and by prayers, we loved each other. We wore masks. We kept distances because we loved the people around us. And it is that love that is the thing that we reflect because we believe that we are loved. Now, did we do it perfectly? Absolutely not. But we kept trying, didn't we? It is giving up. It is believing that it is a waste of time to love that's the real danger. but we won't give up. It's our faith that God embraces us in the midst of this pandemic, and that God sustains us with the Spirit, and that saving love is at work in us as it was in that infant born in Bethlehem. We struggle. There are no parties. That's not the kind of merriment we are doing. The way we are merry is by loving. And that deep merriment that comes from being in a loving relationship is what we celebrate with the God who was born in a stable a long, long time ago. May God be praised. Amen.